My name is Sister Bernadette Sullivan. I'm a member of the congregation of the Franciscan Sisters of the Poor, living here in Cincinnati in St. Clair Convent. Because what I wanted at that time in my life as a young woman living in New York City was to do something worthwhile. I had been a secretary, and I didn't want to continue in that because I didn't see that as fulfilling my desire to do something worthwhile. So I talked to some nurses and found out that Bellevue Hospital School of Nursing, which is located in Manhattan, part of New York City, had been the first school of nursing in the United States. And here it was, right where I lived. So I applied, and after getting a little more science education, I entered the school. So one day, while I was studying there, a sister came to visit the Catholic students, and she was part of the Franciscan Sisters of the Poor. So I went to her meeting, and I liked her very much. She was, like myself, of Irish descent. And she was very beautiful. She looked like a movie actress. And she had a wonderful personality. She invited me and some of the other students to go to Warwick, New York, a place in Orange County, very lovely area with mountains and nice little towns. So my friends from the class and I decided to go. So we went for the weekend. And while we were there, Sister asked us each to come into her office to talk to her. So her question was, Bernadette, did you ever think of being a sister? And I said, well, I've thought of it, but never seriously. So she began to tell me about the congregation and to invite me to come to one of their hospitals in New York and stay overnight and see how they work. So I went, and I must say she pursued me. And when I got there, it was in the evening, and she gave me a room to sleep in. And of course, there was something sweet on the bedside table. And she talked to me again. And I went to sleep. And the next morning, she gave me a book on St. Francis of Assisi that I could take home and read. Because as you can hear, the name of the congregation has St. Francis in it. So I knew he must be important, but I didn't know anything about him. I had grown up in a Jewish neighborhood on Long Island where there was one synagogue and one Catholic church. There were no statues of St. Francis around, so I would learn more or later about him. So I went home the next day and thought about her talk with me, but I wasn't convinced yet. I listened, I prayed about it, I talked to my family, and I went on with my with my days. She called me several times and kept after me and invited me to come to Warwick again. I waited a while, and with some of my friends at Bellevue, I came up to Warwick again. In the meantime, we were getting close to graduation. We had, I think it was just about another 6 months. So I also got an offer from one of the countries in one of the Arab countries that's very rich. I forget which one it was, but they were looking for nurses, and they wanted nurses from the United States. And they would give us lots of money. So I thought about that. So I was between two great divides. Either join the Franciscans, who will give you no money, or go to, I think it was Saudi Arabia. Go to Saudi Arabia and have lots of money. And I was very naive. I had no idea what it would be like to live in Saudi Arabia. I know better now. But anyway, I soon discarded that idea. I didn't want to be far away from my family and my own country. So that's how I got to know the Franciscan Sisters of the Poor. And with the help of friends and family, I decided to go to Warwick, where they had their people who were just learning about the congregation. So that's what I did. So I worked with homeless women and children who were very much in need of help. And that was in Jamaica, which is in Queens, not the other Jamaica, in Queens, New York. And I loved working with the children and with the young mothers, and they appreciated us so much. There were 5 of us sisters working there. And I did that again in Jersey City with the same situation. So at that point in my life, that was my favorite. Heal the wounds of Christ in poor, suffering humanity. Goes right back to Francis, and right back to Francis Xavier, who was our foundress. So from the beginning, our sisters who started in Aachen, Germany, they took care of the people who were afflicted with the plague, with whatever was the disease that was taking people's lives at that time in 1845. They would be there. People didn't want to go to hospitals, and relatives didn't want to visit them because the hospitals were known to be places where you died. And our sisters went, and they cared for the sick and the poor. So right now, here in Cincinnati, we have a place called Tamar's Place. It's for women who have been, who have gotten into prostitution, or women who have been taken from other countries and made into prostitutes. They don't live there, but they come there for a meal, for a shower, for clean clothes, and a a couple of sisters work there, and treat them with dignity. We also have a house where young students come for a week during the year to do good works here in Cincinnati. The aspect of St. Francis is that he is a man of peace. And since we're Franciscans, we ought to have a presence at the United Nations. So at that point, I was a member of a Justice and Peace Committee for the Franciscans. And we were asked, myself and the members of that committee were asked to go to the UN and find out how do you become an NGO, and can the Franciscans become an NGO? So we went, a Franciscan brother of Brooklyn and myself were delegated because we lived in New York at that time, and it was easy for us to go to First Avenue and 51st Street to the UN. So we applied, and the woman we spoke to, who was in charge of accepting NGOs, said, "Where have you been? You're Franciscans. You should have been here a long time ago." And we were pleased to hear that. And Francis went before us and made the way. And so we began the process, and it's a long story. It started in 1984 and is still going on to this day. Well, I was having some difficulty with walking, and I was living in Brooklyn at the time. I went to a local, well, first of all to a doctor, and then to one of the local places where you get exercises to help with your difficulties. And I happen to have scoliosis, which means my body is not as straight as it used to be, and I have pain in my neck and some difficulties. I'm still able to walk, thank God. But after I had this regular exercise, which did help me, I was on a retreat where a woman who was making the retreat gave us a liturgical dance at the end of the retreat that was based on her experience with yoga. So I thought, oh, I should find out about this. So after the retreat was over, I introduced myself to her, and I asked her, did she think that yoga would help me? And she said, oh yes, she was very, very sure about it. So when I moved to Warwick in my retirement time, the place where I had gone when I started out, I found out that there was a yoga group right on the main street in the little town. So I started going to them and found it very helpful. And then when I came here, I found out about Ray, and he started coming to help me here in this convent. So I certainly would recommend it, and we still have a group here that meets once a week. There's about 6 or 7 of us, and one of them who joined us recently asked, how could she be part of yoga. She didn't think she could do it. So I encouraged her, and our teacher encouraged her, and she's with us now. So it's a great help, and I thank you, Ray. I think it's the one where you get down on the floor and put your hands on the floor and put one leg out behind you and then the other leg out behind you and do it again.